All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sport Beach Tech Summit. Welcome to the Art and Science of Coaching. I'll be your moderator today. My name is Elspeth Rollert. I'm the CEO of the Stagwell Marketing Cloud. We build AI-powered software to empower marketers. And I am joined on the stage by a number of esteemed panelists who I will introduce shortly. Now, let's get into it. Coaching today is equal parts intuition and intelligence. Today, we're going to explore how teams and coaches are leveraging biometric data, machine learning models, AI-driven insights, real-time analytics, and equipment engineered at the limits of physics to unlock performance gains. From individual athletes to global teams, today we're discussing how technology is reshaping preparation, decision-making, and what it truly means to coach at the highest levels. Now, joined with me on stage to discuss this are my esteemed panelists. In the middle here, you have Miles Chamley-Watson. He is an Olympic bronze medalist, 3-time Olympian, and 2-time world foil fencer. Beyond sport, he is recognized for his vibrant personality, bold style, and crossover appeal, having attended the 2025 Met Gala and established himself as a standout figure in both athletics and pop culture. And if you don't believe me, follow him on Instagram. You can see for yourself, 500,000 followers. Miles has partnered with top brands including Meta, Nike, Red Bull, Richard Mille, and Mercedes-Benz. He has been featured in publications such as Vogue, GQ, Men's Health, New York Post, and the New York Times. Thank you for being here, Miles. To my right, Jonathan Adashek is IBM's Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications. He is responsible for overseeing the company's global marketing, communications, and corporate social responsibility organization, which includes full funnel marketing, corporate affairs, and ESG. Jonathan aligned IBM's marketing and communications efforts under a single brand platform, Let's Create, in support of IBM's mission to become the leading hybrid cloud and AI company. Before joining IBM, Jonathan worked on Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi Alliance, Microsoft, Edelman, the Clinton administration, White House, and Treasury Department, and several presidential campaigns. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Ben Johnson, who joined SailGP as its Chief Revenue Officer in 2021 to drive commercial growth and revenue across the business, including a focus on strategic partnership sales, media and marketing, and league expansion. Ben has led recent flagship acquisitions of SailGP teams, including Team France, in partnership with Kylian Mbappe, Aries Management, and Accor, strengthening the league's global portfolio and its strategic investor base. He has also helped deliver record-breaking broadcast growth, including its November 2025 broadcast on CBS that drew an all-time high of 3.5 million viewers, making it the single most watched sailing race in history. Before SailGP, Ben worked at Drone Racing League, Tough Mudder, Weber Shandwick, and Edelman. Please give it up for our panelists. All right, you've heard enough from me. Let's kick off the discussion. I first want to start on this topic of intuition versus intelligence. And Miles, I want to begin with you. You are the antithesis of a predictable athlete. Your style is built on deception and flair. When you work with your coach, do you find that video and biometric data help you replicate your magic moments? Or do you ever feel like too much analysis might actually make you easier for an opponent to solve?
Hello, everybody. That's a great question. So actually, I never used to watch video, ever, which is funny. But my new coach now actually makes me watch video on myself, which is to see the things that I'm kind of missing a lot. And I think there's a fine line between watching too much video and not watching enough. So, and I think I'm learning a lot more now about the things that I'm not good at. So when I'm at practice, I kind of like to visualize and watch the things that I'm not good at, and then I can go back when I'm training and then kind of put that into the field of play. So I'm learning now that video analysis is very, very important, but obviously in fencing, tech hasn't really changed too much. So now kind of understanding that that's so important now for the kids to watch video on yourself is super duper important. So now I'm understanding how much more important it is to watch video.
So I want to push on that a little bit. There's a fencing move named after you, the Chamley-Watson, which you unveiled at the World Championship. Can you explain or show the move? And how did that moment come about? Was it intuition? Was it intelligence?
That actually was just pure intuition. And I think why fencing is an amazing sport is it's like physical chess, right? Where you have to almost think about the opponent ahead of time, but also it's very reactionary. So it was honestly just, I'm very flexible. Here, I'll show you. So basically, you need to stand up.
Of course.
So this is my foil. And in fencing, I can't turn my shoulder or I'll get a yellow card. So I was able to wrap my arm around and hit you like that in the chest, which I did the first time. And even, the referee had to kind of stop for a second and like, what happened? And I was like, oh, well, I hit you in the chest. And he's like, what do we call it? And I was like, what about the Chamley-Watson? So now it's funny because coaches hate me because there's like these little 7-year-old kids that are trying to do it now. It's obviously not what they should be doing. But I think it's, for me, I think intuition is something that you can't teach. It's kind of what you have and feeling. So I think for me, I always try to find the balance between, those two kind of things, but which has kind of got me to the level where I am now. But intuition is something that I think AI and tech can't really teach yet.
Yeah, incredible. I would encourage folks to watch the move. It's pretty great. All right, Ben, I want to turn to you. And before I hop into the question, can you just tell the crowd a little bit more about SailGP? Because candidly, I didn't know as much, and once I dove into it, I'm your newest, biggest fan.
No, thank you, and wonderful to be here. We're so appreciative of the opportunity to bring SailGP to groups like this, where you might not have seen it yet, or you might have heard about it in passing, and really some of the education opportunity for us is so important. So for anybody that hasn't seen SailGP yet, think of F1, but instead of really fast cars, we have really fast boats. Oversimplifying it quite a bit, but we have 13 racing, high-performance, high-speed catamarans. These boats are going about 60 miles an hour on water. They're hydrofoiling 6 feet above the water. We actually took an F1 driver, and Max Verstappen, on one of the boats, and he said 60 on a boat feels like 300 in a car because you have no traction, you're not wearing a seatbelt, you're really hanging on for dear life. And we have these incredible male and female athletes. We're the only gender equity sport in the entire world that takes mixed gender at the top level of competition, puts them on identical craft and races in incredible venues around the world. So we get to bring this spectacular sailboat race to places like Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Saint-Tropez, Bermuda, New York, LA, San Francisco, and really capturing the imagination of a new audience. But part of our inclusion today, we are a really interesting sport from a technology perspective. Not only have we built this sport more recently, so we're building from scratch, but we've also got the opportunity to really rethink how technology is built into the DNA of a modern sports competition.
So, sorry, we're supposed to all feel bad for you for your travel every year, right?
It's the toughest places. I have the hardest job in sports.
Yeah.
So let's dive into that a bit more. So SailGP is arguably the most transparent league in the world because every team has full access to their rivals' data and they're all on the same boat, right? So in most sports, a coach's value is in their secret sauce. But in yours, everyone sees the same sauce, right? So how does this transparency change the dynamics of coaching? And from your perspective, does it turn a coach into a data scientist who just optimizes the numbers, or does it actually raise the stakes for human intuition to find that 1% that the sensors really can't see?
We're really at a fun inflection point right now that I think other sports are going to have to follow, from the big four to emerging sports properties from around the world. So we have even tech, which means if you're on a different boat, I can see what your team is doing down to the nth degree. We have the same technology that's in a cruise missile following these boats around as they go 60 miles an hour. So we can take 30,000 data requests off of each boat per second. We have about 40 billion data inputs that we take off of a race over a given weekend. But we are at this fascinating moment right now, and I think you hear a little bit with Miles of this idea of intuition versus analysis. We have too much data. Our coaches on land are trying to figure out what's actionable, what's helpful to the team. At the end of the day, it comes down to the performance of the 6 athletes, them being accountable to their teammates and performing their actions at a high level of competition. But we are at the very cutting edge right now of having too much information for our athletes to be able to process in a competitive way, and figuring out how do you action that in a way that makes you better day in, day out.
So Jonathan, I want to turn to you. IBM is now providing in-fight insights for the UFC and real-time likelihoods for tennis. When you provide that level of transparency to a coach during a match, are you seeing them use it to pivot their strategy midstream? And are there any specific trends you are seeing in what coaches are asking for?
Yeah, so first, thank you for having me. The insights that we're providing to the UFC, that we partnered with them on, really take this great historical data and lifetime data and give a new perspective on what's happening. But if you really want to look at how it's used, how AI and data are used better in coaching, I'd pivot even more to the masters and what we do with the masters. I don't build the app, so I can't take credit for it, but my colleagues do. And, you know, I think Netflix not long ago said it was the best app out there besides Netflix. People recognize the Masters app as a leading edge sports app. And I know that many of the golfers, if not almost all of them, use it every night with their coaches and with their caddies to understand how they played that night or that day, and how their competition or whoever they're being paired with is going to played that same time. And how did they do on hole 13 versus the other one? And we've got so much data there that actually, you know, there's so much that it could create an unfair advantage for certain people, because not everybody can spend the money to go hire a team of data scientists to compress it. Because, you know, as Ben, you were saying, there's just you get to a point of too much data. I don't know that you get to a point of, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that exact point of too much data. I think it's how do you use the data? Because if I take it out of sport for a minute and just look at business in general, only 1% of data today is in a large language model or just in an AI model in general. 1% of data. So if you really think about that, how do you then take that and put it into a model that becomes much more beneficial and provide better insights to then improve the performance that's happening?
Yeah, I used to be at Uber, and we would talk a lot about analysis paralysis. You can have all this data, but if you actually can't take action with it,
it's a very expensive paperweight.
Exactly. All right, let's move on. I want to get a little more into the physics and biometrics, and you know how the work that y'all are doing is pushing performance to its physical limits. Miles, you know, you're currently working on the World Fencing League, launching this April in LA. You're going to have to tell the audience more about that. Which uses AI blade tracking to make the invisible, the amazing speed of the foil, visible for viewers like it had been in golf, hockey, or football. Can you talk a little bit more about that technology, how you think it's going to change the sport, both as a competitor like yourself and for the fan base, which I know you're working very hard to build?
So I just launched the World Fencing League maybe a month ago. And for me, we kind of need to understand why is fencing not on TV, right? There's bowling on TV, there's cornhole on TV. And the biggest component is people don't understand what's going on. So even at the Olympics in Paris, like my mom's there and I'm getting hit and she's cheering for me. I'm like, that's not my point. And we realized that we need to figure out a way that people and fencers can really see somebody getting hit in 10,000 frames per second immediately. So we worked with this company called Dentsu that was able to create a blade tracking that can now track the tip immediately. So if someone's getting hit, now the referee has less of a chance of making a bad call, but now the audience can fully understand what's really going on. And I think this is going to be the change in the sport, because now tech is the most important thing, I think, in sports, right? When the NFL created that line of people running, people can now understand what's going on. So for me now, creating this new blade tracking with Dentsu will finally change the sport in a way that it's being viewed, but also the way it's being studied. So kids can now really see me hitting you in your chest, and now we can work with this company to kind of push it forward, right? So my goal is hopefully in LA 2028, hopefully we've got a gold medal. They use this technology so now everybody can understand what's going on in the sport of fencing. And I think that's what was missing in the sport now. and I'm super duper excited to kind of see where we can push the sport. And yeah, just really, gamify fencing, because it is a combat sport. It's not like the parent trap. It's really sword fighting in the essence. So I think this is going to be really, really amazing. If anyone's in LA, April 25th at the Shrine is our World Fencing League debut. So it's going to be sick. I bet see you both there too.
And will we see the new technology there? Is that where it will be debuted?
Yep. For the first time, we'll be having the new blade tracking AI technology that will be shown for every single match. So you'll be able to see a brand new tech for the first time in the sport of fencing. So I'm very, very excited for this.
Incredible. That's massive. So Ben, your F-50 catamarans are essentially flying computers with 800 sensors generating 240,000 data points per second. I'll repeat that, 240,000 data points per second. How do you prevent, and we've been talking about this a little bit, data paralysis for the crew? And how do coaches coach a human to make a split-second decision when they have more data than a pilot in a fighter jet?
Yeah, so we're really looking at tech from a sport perspective across 3 different areas. One is performance. How do we make the athletes better? How do we make them more competitive, have the greatest racing property on the planet? That's really 2 inputs. It's the wearables. It's what's taking biometric data off the athletes at any given time, and then optical tracking, which is what you can actually pick up with a video camera of what the athletes are doing. And the data behind these 2 products together now is giving you a tremendous amount of insight into the health, mobility, competitive capabilities of the athletes. The next is a safety mechanism where we're looking at how do we tell when 2 F-50s are going to crash into each other at 65 miles an hour, which we need to know as soon as possible. Best case scenario, we've got an early alert warning for the athletes so that they can really avoid or at least brace themselves for these high impact crashes, which we have at almost every race. And then third, where I'm most obsessed right now is really from a fan engagement perspective, which is ultimately where I hope most of this goes. There's some really fascinating ethical questions that we are trying to spend thoughtful time on right now. How much information should I have about a player's performance capability? Should I be able to take that information when I go bet on the race in the next upcoming heat? Things that we are really starting to struggle with, and how far does that go down the level of competition? Are there, again, ethical questions for kids competing, and how early should they have access to that biometric data? How much access should their coaches have to that? So we are trying to look at this and take what other sports are doing thoughtfully. I point out the NFL's Digital Athlete, which is a fascinating product right now that they've developed with AWS. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's helping them detect early injuries. It's helping them look at safety. It's where the new helmets have come from. But for SailGP, I think our mission with all of this data is to make the athletes safer and to make the product better for our fans. So how do we translate that into television? You'll see things like AR, VR overlays that we can make the sport more accessible, more watchable to people that haven't seen the sport of sailing before. But I think these are really the questions that you're going to see leagues and teams wrestling with right now, of sort of across those 3 areas of focus. How do you make that something that's additive and doesn't take the joy of watching sports away from the fan?
So let's lean into that, kind of making it more accessible. Jonathan, IBM's Watson X is being used to analyze movement via everyday video footage, right? Do you see this democratizing elite coaching? Can we eventually take the science of the gold medal and put it in the hands of maybe a kid with a smartphone and a fencing foil?
I think that the data that is being provided through technology for fans and for competitors is changing the landscape dramatically. I think we all agree on that. But fundamentally, I also see it as AI is an input. The insights that are given are an input. You know, Miles was just talking about the intuition. Having that input before you got into into that moment maybe helped you shape what would help you shape what you were thinking you were going to do, but there's got to be that intuition of that moment that allows you. So I don't think that it's going to just replace everything at all. But I do think that the key place that I think we would all agree is it can make a massive massive change in how fans engage with sports. And for us, it's 3 ways. The fans you have, how do you make them more passionate fans and more excited, more rabid fans? 2, how do you get new fans and open that up? But 3, how do you monetize those fans? Because as much as we might want to talk about just creating fans, let's be clear. If we can't monetize them, It doesn't matter how many we have.
All right, let's. We talked a little bit about coaches there. Let's shift to a conversation around authority versus collaboration, I would call it. Miles, you've spoken about the mental edge and the importance of having a coach who truly understands your unconventional style. In an era where data can tell you and your coach everything, how has that changed your relationship with the coach? I mean, how has that evolved?
Well, I think mostly with my coach it's an interesting one. Obviously, he's known me since I was a little kid, kind of a pain in the ass. So he kind of understands, my gift is my intuition and my unpredictability, which I don't think, an AI or data can track that yet. So I think it's a fine line of not losing that, but also, like he said, it can only help you if it's used the right way, right? So if you can kind of have those two live, together, I think that's only going to help each athlete. But I think the intuition is the one thing that most athletes hopefully will never lose, because that's your special sauce. So I think for me, it's, when kids are asking me, I think that's the most important thing is your intuition and your fencing is more, like, you can't really think about anything. It's more of a feeling. Otherwise you're going to get hit. So I think the intuition is the most important thing, but having that AI component will only help you from a training perspective, from also, getting new fans, which is something that we need to do in the sport of fencing, and education, right? It can help educate them to the most important thing. Like, you've got that app, which I need to talk to you about, because I need one of those too. So I think the intuition is something that is, I think, your special sauce that I think separates you from being the best to being the greatest.
Miles and I were just talking about Lewis Hamilton in the back. We sponsor Ferrari. Lewis is a good friend of yours. Seen you guys together. Lewis gets a ton of data. All F1 racers get a ton of data. And I love, part of our app with Ferrari is we can listen to the radio, the team radio, when you're in the paddock. And you can hear the back and forth between the driver and their team. But all the data in the world, it's like, it doesn't matter for that moment. I remember talking to Lewis in Melbourne last year before the first race, and it was raining. And somebody said to him, "What's your biggest concern today? You have all the data." He said, "I've got all the data. I've never driven this car in the rain. I need to understand how it's going to respond." That's intuition.
So, Ben, when we think about coaches with SailGP and the open data that coaches have, that athletes have, how does the SailGP coach manage the psychology of the boat when the data might be telling a different story?
So we've moved all of our coaches off the water, which for anybody that's followed a 300-year-old sport, there was people up in arms that this is ruining the soul of what sailing is. They wanted to be watching the water. They wanted to be watching the wind. The data they have access to in sort of a similar setup to the paddock at F1 is so much greater, and they're so much more in tune to what's actually happening, not just with the individual boat they're following, but the overall race course and how that plays into strategy. I mean, Miles can talk about this certainly more eloquently than I can, but it's fun for us to watch that balance between a team of 6 athletes working in true unison, where if somebody screws up, they're going to flip a boat at 70 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour, and all 6 people have to react in real time with what a coach is seeing and where that data hits that actionable point. So I think, it's, again, back to this idea of intuition and thoughtful, actionable data, finding a happy harmony together. And that's only, I think, coming down to that human interaction of the athletes and their coaches and how they trust each other in those moments to decide which one wins out.
All right, well, we have time for one more question. We've talked about the science all day, but to close us out, lightning round here. If you had to choose between an AI coach with 100% perfect data and a human coach with 100% perfect gut feeling for the final point of a gold medal match, who are you putting your trust in?
Miles, I think you're the only one that can actually answer.
I'm not going to be in a gold medal match.
I'm going to 1,000% say the human, because that's the one thing you can't teach, and that's the most important thing. Human, the gut never lies. So that's 100%. No data can ever. Sorry, mate. No data can ever get in the way of that. So 100% the human gut.
Incredible. The gut never lies. Miles, Ben, and Jonathan, thank you so much, everybody.